Now today in the shop we're going to try to get the base clear coat sprayed. We sprayed the trim on the day before. I have actually two videos dealing with this part before this one. You can back up two videos. We put the trim on and designed it. But today we want to get the base clear on. It should take us the better part of the day. We have to back mask. I want to share some tips, tricks, things I think will be helpful if you're new to painting. And of course, you can watch this in full 4K. Just adjust your device accordingly. Last night, it went down below freezing, so I took the part, put it down by the heat in the house. Not for the paint drying as being a problem, but the problem is, and this is a good tip, a really good tip, never leave anything with tape in a garage that goes below freezing overnight. That really makes the tape ultra sticky, and that is a good tip. Ask me how I know. I have paid the price many times. I try to always let paint dry in the garage overnight unless it goes below freezing. In that case, I put it in the back furnace room. But anyway, that's the tip one. Today we're going to try to get the clear on the part. We're going to wait till it warms up a bit. It's still really cold. And we'll try to paint in the warmest part of the day, which is from lunchtime to maybe 4 o'clock. So, and try to share some really good tips. If you're doing a similar part or something, even painting a guitar, it doesn't matter. The rules of painting always apply like the rules of gravity. Now, I had given some thought to making a similar little backrest for the seat when I do the MT-09, or if I make a second one of these little seat cowls. But these seat cowls come right off, and underneath is a 2-passenger seat, so it gives you a lot of choices. And I always like choices going back and forth with different motorcycle parts. I made this one up from scratch for the RD. We used it for many years. It's a little bit lower, and it gives it a little bit of a cafe look. And for the R1, I have 2 of these pillions. Again, I like to customize the motorcycle, and I like to move things around and change things up. I don't like just riding a bike as if it's finished and we're just going to ride it. I like having constant little changes, little mods, little things I paint, customize, do myself. A lot of people don't believe it, but that part is made out of wood. You thought I was kidding. It really is made of wood. That's pretty funny. A lot of people, they do not believe that when I show them that. That was one of my little inventions. And somewhere up in the rafters, years ago, I actually made a seat cowl for the for the GS that I used for many years. And it's just, to me, it's just fun making these parts from scratch. And here's a picture of that seat cowl that I had for the GS. And of course, it goes right over the seats, and it goes on and off with 2 bolts. I had that for a while. I used it, and then I wanted to evil twin out the bike, as I always do. And I'm still not sure exactly how I want to do this, but I know I want to get rid of the strap. I never liked the way the look of the strap on a bike, and since I'm never going to ride passengers, that's definitely not going to happen. We can lose the strap. So what will happen by letting the parts dry underneath a heating vent, it serves 2 purposes. The paint will dry just a little faster anyway, and at this point it's not giving off, it's not outgassing or stinking at all, but it'll warm the part up with all the tape, because as we pull all the backmasking off, I don't want to pull up any paint or leave any tape residue on, and the heat helps. And that heat really does make the tape less sticky, and even though this paint is well cured, I don't like to leave any scars in it if I don't have to. So getting rid of all the backmasking first. This is the heat. Always think of the heat as your friend. So here's where you have to make a decision. If this were a color that doesn't cover well, or if we were painting white over red, this paint edge would be very thick. This isn't, because I mixed the gold with a little bit extra pigment, so it covered real well. And I don't have a really sharp edge, but if I did, I'd take a credit card, and just at a 45-degree angle shave that edge. Never, never, never sand it, and never sand anything that's metallic. You'll see the scratches when you put the clear on. This looks like it came out pretty well. Now I'm going to clean the part again with M600, and I have to make a little handle to hold it, and then we'll mix up the clear. We'll be ready to paint. Sometimes this can be more of a problem than you think. It was just so you have a way to hold a part. In this case, I don't want to hold it by the little brackets. I want to grab it in the middle so I can rotate it around while I'm spraying. Sometimes that can be a little tricky to figure out. Now, some Sikkens M600. Now that I'm holding it by the handle, my fingers, which always have some residual oil on them, and mine especially, just from working in a dirty environment. This is the last time. I'll tack rag this down while this is drying. I'll mix up a batch of clear, and we'll be ready to get the first coat of clear on today. Maybe if we're lucky, we can get 2 or 3 coats on. We'll just see how the weather holds out. It's still pretty cold out there. Now, I don't want my hands touching this anymore. I don't want to leave any fingerprint. This is a tack rag, ordinary tack rag from Harbor Freight. Just before you paint it, it's a good idea to tack rag it down. Now, it's a really good tip before you even plug the compressor in. I leave the valve open all the time, so any moisture tends to drain out. But as soon as I plug this in, I would rock the compressor back and forth a little bit with the valve open, and there's always a couple of drops of moisture come out, and the moisture sometimes can cause severe, and I mean severe, fish eyes. So that's one, the rust gets in there. So this is another one of the good tips if you're new to painting is keep that compressor dry, keep the valve open, and bleed it every time you use it. It's really a good tip. So over many years, I've used many different brands and types of 4-to-1 clear, and I came up with a very standard thing. They're all pretty good. None of them have ever just been a lot easier to buff out. They've all been decent. So by price, this is relatively inexpensive. There are some that are 3 times the price, but this one works pretty well for us. But under our shop conditions, this is the trick, especially in cold weather, fast urethane activator. If you use this slow, the part seems to, in cold weather, it seems to take forever to dry. Now, always a good idea, when you think this is stir it up just a little more. It's a 4-to-1 mix. And from this point on, I have to put the mask on, and don't want to get this on my skin if I don't have to. Don't want to breathe it if I don't have to. But it looks like we're going to be able to paint. It's a cloudy day. It's cold as can be. But I think we're going to be able to paint. Now, this is another good tip, is if you're using Harbor Freight guns, this is a really good tip. Seal the top, just so you don't get any dripping. Sometimes they drip, especially when they get old. They don't seem to have a perfect seal. That solves the problem pretty much every time. So the objective is to get on a very thin coat first. And you can see how thin that's going on, almost like an airbrush. That tends to minimize any little flypapery dust that you're going to pick up. Although when you spray outside like this, you're always going to pick something up. But we're going to buff this part out anyway, for sure. And it just would make it easier if I can get a nice thin coat on, just to the point where it's just starting to look wet. And the one thing I never want to do, never on the first coat, is just blow on a big wet coat, get runs in it, get everything that you're trying to rush through it. Patience is such a big thing here. And I always tell people it's so much better, so much easier to put on a lot of thin coats and not try to do it in one thick coat and take a break in between coats. And a thing I always found works best for me is once that first coat goes on dry, it tends to tack up usually 45 minutes, half an hour, and warm weather 15 minutes. But in cold weather like this, take a nice healthy coffee break or go do something else. Because once you get impatient about this, it just really is not working in your favor. Now, in this case, it was really cold today. I gave it almost an hour. and it was worth it. Now I can put on what I'll call a wet coat. I've opened up the nozzle on the gun, but I'm not putting it on all in one coat like you would paint a car. That's the trick of tricks, is to go back and forth, and the more thin coats you put on, you minimize the chance you're going to get runs. It's just the paint seems to lay down better when you put on multiple coats in one day. And at the end of this day, I want to take that part. Once it gases off for a little while out in the garage, I want to bring it in, put it up by a heating vent, and it'll dry at least one day. But because we're coming up on this really, really cold weather, I don't know that we're going to be getting the paint every day. But from that point on, it'll be a key thing to let it dry between coats. And that laid down pretty good. That's real good, in fact. So that's going to sit up by our heating vent overnight. Tomorrow or the next day, depending on how it dries up, we're going to sand it out and put the final clear on. And if I can give this one extra day of dry time up by the heating vent, it'll be in my favor no matter what. The dry time in cool weather, it just takes a little bit longer. And the biggest thing this time of year, because the weather's so bad, so cold anyway, I'm never in a rush, and patience is a big part of this. So the next time we shoot video in the shop, we're going to get this part final sanded out, get the final clear on it, and a couple days after that do the final buffing. But I'm real happy the way this came out, and it's going to be one nice little accessory for the motorcycle that we didn't have before, and something I think it's a great entry-level part if you're looking to make your first carbon fiber part. And thanks guys so much for watching.